I used to commute into the city. I'd have to catch a bus from my apartment to the metro into the city, switch lines, and then walk 6 blocks. And so I would sit on the metro and fantasize about what it would take to trick someone out of their seat. See, I got on at the second to the last part of the line then, and all the seats were usually taken. So my commute would be compounded by having to stand for, 30-odd minutes. So I would sit in my seat, if I got one, or stand there as I jealously looked at the people who had it, and wonder what it would take. And my favorite scheme was to stand up in the middle of the car, like a big congregation, and say, I can't help but notice that none of us wants to be on this train. I mean, we're all staring at the floor, and we're all headed to jobs that we don't want. And I just can't help but think that, well, hey man, what's your name? Bob. Yeah, Bob. Bob, if you could be anywhere right now, where would you want to be? Tahiti. Tahiti. Why Tahiti, Bob? That's where my wife and I celebrate our anniversary, our wedding. Our honeymoon was in Tahiti. Awesome, Bob. Did you know that the next stop is West Falls Church? There's a bus there that takes you to Dulles. If just you, for all of us who can't do it, would you be willing when that door opens to go to Tahiti? You mean right now? Yes, right now, for all of us barreling on this train into the city, the jobs we don't want to do, you could score a victory for all of us. Those doors are going to open in like 30 seconds. What are you going to do? I guess I'm going to Tahiti. You heard that? He's going to Tahiti. You're going to Tahiti. Yay! And he runs out and I take his seat. It would be beautiful. We're in Advent. As I said before, there are 3 Advents in every Advent. There is the Advent of the arrival of Jesus and the infant Jesus in Bethlehem. There's the arrival of Jesus at the end of days to judge the living and the dead. And then there's the Jesus that arrives in every human heart every day. We celebrate that Advent. But if you've noticed the calendar, there are 24 shopping days left until Christmas. We are all on an Advent train, barreling toward these arrivals. God is already here in the human heart. God is arriving. God is changing everything in our lives. And if you like the train you're on, if you're like my mom, whose tree is perfect right out of Southern Living magazine, it looks perfect. If you're ready for the perfect Christmas, if you're ready for this Advent, then stay on the train. You're good. But if you don't like the train, if Christmas and the holidays bring up complicated feelings, know that the disciples had their arrival right in front of them and they had some complicated feelings too. Jesus tells them that the world is changing underneath their feet. The very heavens will quake at what is to come. So if you like the train you're on, stay. But if you don't like the train you're on, there's always to leave. Some of us look at Christmas and we are ready for it. We're ready. I mean, we have our Advent wreath. We have our Christmas tree waiting. The Yule log is prepared to be ignited. Sorry, I'm a pyromaniac. It's kind of a thing. So, we are ready for this Christmas. We are prepared for this Advent. Jeremiah was part of a movement of exiled priests who backed the wrong high priest. They were exiled to Anathoth, where Jeremiah's potential arrival of a Messiah, someone of the Davidic line, who would come and restore Israel to its rightful place, so that it could dwell in safety, so that righteousness would once again be its cause. He looked forward to that day and prepared for it, calling his people calling attention to the people's sins and laying the path for it. John the Baptist would take his cues from Jeremiah and from Moses to lay a path for Jesus' ministry. We are in this Advent season, and if you like the train you're on, well, if you are with all of those who are awaiting that coming Messiah, then stay on that train. This path is being laid out for you, and you have only to follow it. Follow the joy already present in your life. Follow that call to God and to Jesus, and walk the way to Christmas. 1, 2, 3, 4. Mark it with your Advent reading, and walk that path. But for a lot of us, when it comes to these Advents, when it comes to Jesus at the end of days, when it comes to Jesus in the infant bath, when it comes to Jesus in our own heart, Christmas is a lot more complicated. And that makes Advent complicated too. Maybe the thought of gathering with family and friends is not enticing after what just happened at Thanksgiving when someone made the mistake of bringing up religion and politics. Maybe that's not your thing. Maybe you've lost someone in your life. And Christmas is just a reminder of that hole that they left behind. That's why we have services called Blue Christmas and Longest Night, to mark an Advent that's different for the rest of us. We're on this train, stuck on a train, barreling towards something that we don't understand or particularly like. And it's okay to have complicated feelings about Christmas and about Advent. It's okay to have mixed feelings about the ground shifting underneath your feet, about the very heavens quaking at the arrival of this Jesus. Advent is complicated. And so it's okay to have some mixed feelings about Christmas and the preparations you have to make, and everything that must be done between now and then, and everything that's going to happen after, when it comes to cleaning up all those Christmas decorations and putting them back in the attic. I hated that part. It's okay to have complicated feelings about an Advent, because Advent is complicated. The very ground shifts beneath the disciples' feet. And so it's important for us to acknowledge our mixed feelings about this and perhaps sift through them. The joy and the loss. The peace and the complicated. It's important to sift, to use this. Some folks use Advent as something of a little Lent. With God arriving, it is a time to contemplate and to prepare. Contemplate in prayer and in praise in church. To sift through the feelings. To sift through the expectations about Advent. On the one hand, there's the joy and the peace at the arrival of the infant Jesus. And that's wonderful. But if this child is the Messiah, then that calls into question all of those things that Jeremiah warned about, all of those sins and misgivings and the ways that we hurt ourselves and betray God and our neighbor that need to be sifted through, that need to be called attention to. We need to work our way through those complicated feelings. Why do we resist this child? Why do we worry about the second coming? Why do we wonder about the arrival of God in our own hearts? Advent is complicated. And so it's important to stop and sift through. Maybe not run to Tahiti, but at least contemplate the train that we're on. Because some of us really, really like the train we're on. And it's barreling toward a Christmas we welcome. But for the rest of us, Christmas is complicated. And it's important to take a stop or take a seat and do the work that needs to be done when it comes to encountering a complicated Christmas. You know, there was the positive test. There was the emerging baby bump. But it wasn't until the little guy arrived that I understood I'm going to be a parent. And it wasn't until, and I got the first sleepless night. And there was that complicated embrace holding my son for the first time. But it wasn't until they had us put him in the car seat and let us go that I went, oh my gosh, I am a parent. And they just let you take these little things and go? I remember the ground shifting underneath my feet and a whole host of feelings come to the fore about what it meant to be a parent. On the one hand, I was ready and I was welcoming this child, and it was a joyous and wonderful occasion. On the other hand, I looked ahead at all of the sleepless nights and all of the things that I would have to tell him and educate him as a parent and all the things he would do one day without me. And I felt all of this pressure. In the midst of joy, it was complicated. In the midst of this new birth in my life, it was difficult and complicated. We tend to think of the Nativity as this peaceful season. as this peaceful place, this, sleeping child, doe-eyed Mary, doting Joseph. But remember, it was complicated. They were in a cave, in a manger, because there was no room for them at the inn. They were in the midst of an oppressive culture in a client state of the Roman Empire. They were soon to be refugees in their own home. It was complicated. If you like the train you're on, by all means stay. But if you don't like the train, if your feelings are a little complicated in this season, let me take your seat.